Hello, everyone. Welcome to the latest installment of TechTarget's Digital Skills Acceleration Series. Today, our focus is on brand advertising. I'm Jon Panker, TechTarget's Managing Director for Asia Pacific, and our guest speaker today is Adam Davis, our Senior Director of Brand Solutions here at TechTarget. Our goal through this series is to really help you uplift your digital skills knowledge, arm you with questions that you can take as you evaluate potential solution providers in various areas. We do try to keep it quick in this series. This webcast should last no longer than 20 minutes or so. And we will, of course, offer you a little bit of TechTarget perspective as it relates today to brand solutions. So our featured speaker, Adam Davis, again, is our Senior Director for Brand Advertising and Search Solutions. He's a 15-year veteran of the industry who's got experience managing brand solutions and advertising ops. He currently manages brand for TechTarget's portfolio of more than 150 websites, as well as our off-network solutions. And Adam has expertise in both designing innovative brand solutions and also measuring investment and tracking ROI on those brand building activities. So we're going to pose a series of FAQs to Adam and let him give you some knowledge that hopefully you can put to good use. Question number one, Adam, what is the difference between contextual and programmatic advertising?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I guess for starters, thanks for having me on, John. It's always a pleasure. So I think most people in the business are going to understand the basic differences between contextual and programmatic. You know, on the contextual side, we're talking about aligning your banners with relevant content, stuff that makes sense to your audience, that's going to draw them in. So you're waiting there when they come to that content, your message is right next to it. On the programmatic side, you know, you're really looking at more systematic targeting. It's very data driven. You're able to splice your audience, all those types of things. But realistically, they're actually, you know, two different ways to approach the same question, which is, you know, how can I get my banners in front of the in-market buyers that I need to meet, that I want, that matter to me. So, you know, despite the common goal, there are actually very different benefits that come from each of them. So it's important to take those into consideration. And, you know, on the contextual side, we're talking about timing. Again, people that are researching are very much have that the solution's top of mind. They're interested in that topic right then. So you're getting your banners there. You're obviously getting a bump from the publisher that you're aligning with, you know, presumably industry leaders. There's a brand trust that gets built up there. And then, you know, with contextual, you are meeting new people, right? So, you know, you don't necessarily have a list. You're aligning your banners next to this content, and everybody in the world that's interesting, that's researching, that's about to buy can find this content, and as a result, find your banners and your message. So on the programmatic side, you know, because it gets a little bit more data driven, you know, there's a lot of stuff you can do, personalization, audience segmentation, all of that you can actually automate very effectively just because of the nature of the ad serving. A lot of integration happens on the programmatic side with different inputs, using different tactics, even results from other tactics. Hey, I want to target people that have clicked on an email in the past, or I want to find this subset of my audience in the programmatic space. You know, that's all doable. And then, you know, realistically on the programmatic side, there's a lot of detailed reporting that comes about because of those data overlays. So again, two different approaches to the same problem, very different benefits. I will say, you know, one thing that you really want to keep in mind, regardless of which path or both paths you're taking, is that the quality of the content and the quality of the data that is going into these campaigns is absolutely paramount. You know, if you're talking about poor content, you know, subpar topics, not relevant, or if you're looking at data that, you know, is really aggregated from places that don't have a solid footing, they don't know your audience, or even, you know, in some cases, non-compliant data, you can basically, you know, kiss the benefits of that goodbye, because that's all going to drag your campaign down.
Okay, so big news in the brand community. Google announced a little while ago that it's going to eliminate third-party cookies. A lot of people buzzing about this. I guess the question for you is, what does this mean for the brand advertising industry as a whole?
Yeah, so a bombshell would be an understatement, I think. Certainly created huge ripples Although I will say that I don't know that it was really the first move in this direction. I think really what it did is it accelerated what GDPR and some of the other legislation has already started. Data privacy is driving the elimination of unique identifiers out there in the market. People's search history, where they've clicked, devices, things like those things. Those are all going away with the loss of third-party cookies. So yeah, that's a big concern, and it's a big reason why it's on a lot of people's minds right now. I will say, despite the uncertainty, there's probably two concrete facts we know right now. One is that one-to-one programmatic is going away as we know it. That's really kind of the use case that a lot of these data privacy legislation, or a lot of the data privacy legislation is targeted at. And then, because third-party cookies were able to bring information about users along with them throughout their journey across different platforms and different placements throughout the internet, what we're doing is we're losing a lot of purchase intent data when the third-party cookies go away. We were able to tap into that information. We were able to understand who those people were, what they were doing. For anybody that was doing that in a third-party manner, that's all going away. So that's a real concern. I would say, moving forward, looking ahead, realistically, brands are going to be, trading off these cookies as long as they can, right? That's kind of the nature of the business. But of course, everybody needs to be planning ahead, thinking about what's next. From my perspective, there are a few trends that I think we're likely to see. One is going to be a shift back to some degree to the contextual advertising we were talking about a minute ago. I think when you're aligning your banners with high quality content, it really gives marketers just kind of an assurance that they're reaching the eyeballs they need to reach. They're not wasting their money. They're getting in front of the people and the buyers who are looking for solutions. So that's certainly something that's likely to happen. I think, there's no question that first party data is going to be king. It already is, but this just magnifies it even more. I don't think there's going to be any kind of like fall back to 2005 or anything like that, where we're going back to, way back when, but people are going to be hustling to understand how they can aggregate their data, their first party data, how they can put it to good use, make it actionable. Because really now all that's left when you take away the third party cookies is the first party data when it comes to finding paths to verified purchase intent data. That's what we have. And so anybody that does have that first party data really has a leg up when it comes to audience insights and audience reach and targeting. I would say, make no mistake, it's not easy to do. First party data is hard to not only gather and have the foundation and infrastructure to develop, but it's also hard to make actionable. So I don't say that lightly, but again, that's where a lot of people are looking. And then lastly, there's going to be a lot of industry collaboration out there. There's different stakeholders from different pieces of the puzzle all coming together, trying to work together to understand and really influence where that's going to go. So, all told, I would say, like, as we approach that 2022 milestone that we're looking at, it's really important for people to partner with the publishers that are going to continue to have intent data, and then also the ones that are going to continue to be able to reach targeted audiences.
Okay, good advice. So there are going to be a lot of people watching this who are field marketers, and they are very closely tied to pipeline creation and progression. And I think one of the things that they struggle with is how to effectively measure their brand investment. So give us a sense of, first of all, what are some of the common metrics for measuring brand investment? And then I'll come back with a follow-up question in a bit on how brand is tied to consideration.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in some cases, it almost feels like a vanilla question, right? Like, what are the metrics that you look at? But as you get further and further down the path, you can see that the complexity really starts to add up. So I think it's absolutely worth digging into. I think at the outstart, obviously, you want to check the basics, the click-through rates, impressions that, to goal, things like that are really going to kind of calibrate where the campaign is. But, a lot of times those can feel a little bit like empty metrics to people. It tells you data, but it doesn't always tell you exactly what your campaign's doing. So really getting some more detailed and more granular audience insights is going to be valuable, whether that's firmographic details about the audience, or perhaps it's, account lists, who's engaging, who's being reached. All of that data can be repurposed and used for other tactics to make sure everything's getting triangulated properly. Or maybe it's activity like keyword searches, even how long people are staying on pages and on engaging with ads. All of that is very insightful into how effective the campaign is. And then, of course, brand metrics certainly don't stop on the publisher side. So, the post-click type stuff, the stuff that's on the client side, all of that is, equally, if not more important to monitor, to make sure that the campaigns are in fact performing well, and that they're getting value out of what they want. And so, I think, before, you can see a list of like all of these metrics on this slide. So, before I think anybody goes running down to like the nearest analytics shop and says, hey, give me all the data you have in a big spreadsheet. I think it's really important to understand the metrics and then pare it down to what is actually vital to the campaign that you're running. So I think every conversation that I ever have with any marketer or sales professional always starts with one question, and that's, what are you trying to do? That's really going to provide the framework for everything after that, be it, construction of the campaign, execution of the campaign, how we monitor and optimize campaigns. And then, obviously about what we're talking about is, what's the reporting? What are the metrics we look at? For example, I wouldn't be too interested in like landing page visits if we're running a campaign that has an expandable ad unit where video is being shown, because we want those people to stay in the unit, watch the video. That's the key, the KPI in that case. Or, I wouldn't necessarily look a lot at cost per engagement if we're running a really wide ranging, brand awareness campaign that's going to a landing page that doesn't even have a reg barrier on it. So you can understand where like there are certain metrics that make sense for certain things, and you want to make sure that your display campaign is not only set up around those KPIs that you've set, established in advance, but then you're also making sure that you look at the metrics that make sense to the campaign you're running, because I can tell you, you don't want to be chasing shadows and wasting time and optimizing to things that don't even make sense.
Yep. And so, Adam, just so that we're all speaking the same language, the first two boxes here from left to right, the banner metrics and the audience and activity insights, would be front-end metrics. And then the post-click metrics would be back-end metrics, basically what happens when somebody clicks off to a destination, how engaged are they on that particular platform, right?
Right, exactly. I would say, certainly the banner metrics are the front end metrics you're talking about. The audience and activity insights, that gets a little bit more of a gray area where you're digging a little deeper. It's not just kind of the vanity metrics or the front end stuff. And then, absolutely, the back end metrics where advertisers are seeing what's happening on their site. They're making sure that it's not just empty traffic and empty clicks.
Okay, let's come back to this notion then of justifying an investment in brand, specifically when you're tied to pipeline creation or pipeline development. What are some ways that brand actually has an impact on vendor consideration, and how can marketers who are considering making investments in this area actually go about building a case to do so?
Yeah, it's a great question. Obviously one that's always on everybody's mind. And I think there's an interesting dichotomy at play here. On one hand, I think if you talk to almost anybody, even if they're not in the advertising business, I think most people would tell you that just kind of gut reaction is that advertising works. Just setting aside the $200 billion in the US that gets spent every year, the idea that if buyers see your message, they get comfortable with it, they understand it, they build trust with it, most people would assume that that's going to give you a leg up when decision time comes around. But then, on the flip side is that it's notoriously hard to prove ROI on the brand side. So, all that being said, regardless of where you're at in the market, your goal is to make sure that next buyer is considering your product or your solution or whatever it is that you're selling. So, whether that's the startup angle where all they're looking to do is get a seat at the table. You want to make sure that people are seeing what you have to do. You're kind of figuring your way in the market and people getting people to notice. Or if it's those established brands, they got to defend their turf. They got to stay on top of the heap. And then really they also need to make sure that people understand that they're, manipulating their solution as they need to address new challenges. All of that is boils down to the fact that consideration is vital, and the key tenet of a brand campaign. So then the real question is, how do you get that consideration? And there are a couple of ways. With demand gen, I think there are a couple of ways to do that. With demand gen, obviously, you have a little bit more of a narrow slice of the total addressable market you have. It's only going to be in short bursts. I think this slide we're showing now is very simple, and yet I think it's very powerful, because it does show that, I sometimes call it kind of short-termism with demand gen. It gets you front and center for a bit, but then you fall back. You're not really creating a lot of consistency. Whereas with brand advertising, it's a much more efficient way to kind of repeatedly reach buyers who might otherwise not engage with us or you. And, you can see that over time. Consistently, display advertising kind of builds a foundation and then increases, rather than having these, fits and starts that you see on the demand gen side. And so, at TechTarget, we found the exact same thing. That slide's from, the IPA in London, but we actually ran our own study and we found the exact same thing, which was, you can see in the data when we looked at advertisers who were kind of always on, consistently visible in the market, they actually saw a 25% bump in consideration. And again, at TechTarget, we have, we're constantly calling, we're constantly understanding exactly, what buyers are saying they're considering, who they're considering, the list. So we're looking at tangible consideration data on this stuff. And we looked at it over 2 years. So, the consistent advertisers getting a big boost. The inconsistent ones, they're kind of here or there. They might go dark for a bit. They still saw a boost, but clearly not as high. I actually think the most interesting data we got from the study was for the advertisers that weren't spending. It's not as though they're just treading water. They're not staying at zero. They're actually losing ground to all of their competitors by not advertising. So, consistency and scale, there's no question that's what matters to be driving downstream consideration with brand advertising. You just don't want to be in a scenario where you're losing ground. You want to build the foundation, and then over time, you're going to consistently build up that brand trust. You're going to engage buyers over and over again. And ultimately, that's really going to put you in a good spot when it's decision time for them.
Okay, great. So I think it's fair to say that the brand industry has evolved, really has come a long way. I'm hoping you can take a moment maybe to highlight some innovative creative types, some innovative targeting options that are now at marketers' disposal that maybe didn't exist, 5-10 years ago.
Yeah, so absolutely. I think on the B2B technology side, I would say I'm currently looking less probably at some of the kind of new, flashy, shiny creative that you sometimes see in the market. I think a lot of times there's a little bit of window dressing to those that's more common on the B2C side. Certainly eye catching is always good. You want your message to be seen, no question. But I think really what we always fall back on is, reaching the right audience at the right time with, what I would call purposeful creative. That's always going to rule the day for us. But on the, as far as innovation, the amount of data that's out there that's available that publishers are able to collect, specifically TechTarget in this case, that's been really a key to differentiation for us and certainly innovation. Priority Engine, which is obviously where we source all of our purchase intent data and aggregate all of that. I'm fortunate on the brand side to be able to tap into that data. So we're consistently updating what we have available, how we can target, whether that's targeting people that are just dropped in market leads. Maybe there's a competitor angle with people having engaged with content on competitors. or it could be, you know, as straightforward as finding new ways to target users that are coming to our clients' websites. You know, the amount of data that's there and the way that we're able to manipulate that has really created a sense of kind of customized, very effective banner campaigns. And, you know, the results that we're seeing are great. So we know, you know, right now it's working. And I will say, like, the last note on that piece, I think what's really interesting from an innovation standpoint is that it's not a dead end. You know, what I almost refer to it sometimes as foundational innovation, because what we're offering is obviously innovative. We're really data targeting, data heavy, but it also gives marketers kind of the key to the car as far as continuing down that road. So they can figure out new innovations on their side, whether it's personalizing banner creative, maybe it's just splicing together different lists. It could be even be taking things to the social platforms where they can, you know, target and retarget. So there's a lot that they can do with that. So when we're innovating, I think it's really helpful for marketers for us to leave that and give them a boost to then innovate themselves. And so the other piece that I wanted to highlight in this situation was the search side. So we are still very heavily focused on search. It is a clear driver of audience access and intelligence. There's just no two ways around that. So being front and center on search is huge. I will say there's been a huge rise over the last 2 to 3 years in zero-click searches, which is effectively when people search on Google and then never click on anything. They actually just find their answer from the Google search results page. So the slide that we're showing here, we talk about this complete brand search strategy and how people that are running Google ads and paid ads need to also be looking at the organic listings. But the 10%, 90% actually don't do this justice, because with those zero-click searches up over 50%, that actually means that less than 5% of people who are searching on Google are actually clicking on Google ads. So, I mean, the competition to get to the top of those organic search results is fierce, and it's just getting more and more important for people to be there. So what we do is, really take advantage of TechTarget's strength in the search platforms, the first, second, third search result listings that we have across basically all tech searches with our keyword takeover offerings. We use that, we key in on the behavior that's happening, the search terms that are going. We're really using the data that we can garner from that and turning that into a banner offering for our clients, which more or less kind of lets them cut to the front of the line of organic search. It's, anybody that's ever done SEO will know that it's very resource heavy. It takes a long time, and the benefits of it, might be months down the road. So while I would certainly suggest continuing that effort, we kind of give this little shortcut to be able to have our banner ads, people serve their banner ads next to the content when we're ranking really high. So everybody that's searching on those terms and finding TechTarget's quality content is then going to see those banners when they reach our sites. It's immediate impact for the 90% of clickers who are going away from the paid ads. So again, that's, we're using these. We want to make sure we're hitting the right audience at the right time. We actually, in this, some of the innovation we're adding onto these offerings deals a lot with the competitive space. So we understand a lot of what's going on. We understand the data. We're able to aggregate the data on, competitors and the marketplace, what kind of keywords they're buying for paid ads. And we're then able to integrate that into the campaigns we offer. So again, you're reaching the right audience when they have your solutions top of mind, but you're also doing that and taking away other opportunities from, your competitors, which again, that's a huge, huge benefit. So I would say, kind of going back to that Google question, the third-party cookie question you asked early on, we know innovation's coming. In that sense, it's almost being forced on the industry. But some of that's going to be what's old is new again type of concepts. But then I think there's also going to be some targeting options that we're going to bring to the market that's going to be available in the market that we really haven't even seen yet. It's just going to depend on some of those changes. So, it's really going to keep us on our toes. We know that, like you mentioned, the industry is changing at a really fast pace. I just think it's really important for anybody that's planning for the future right now in brand advertising space, to really start partnering with people who are set up for success moving forward.
Yeah, so that's a perfect segue into my final question for you. We like to end each segment in this series with a checklist, if you will, to arm people with potential questions to ask providers that they may want to engage. So you've got a few things here on the screen. Walk me through these. What should we be talking to brand solution providers about?
Yeah, so I think this is hopefully a handy checklist for anybody that's doing this. Any publisher or any partner that you're going to be working with that's worth their salt should be ready to answer all of these questions. And frankly, they should be excited that you're asking them, because it's really a differentiator for anybody in the market that's doing the right thing and running campaigns that are targeted with quality data and performing well. Right away, I think off the top, a lot of it is focused on stuff we've talked about at this point. Who's your audience? How is this partner or publisher going to reach them? Do they own the sites that they're targeting on, or are they aggregating from other sites? Again, that goes back to the third-party cookie question, which you want to make sure you're not getting into a bit of a dead-end campaign that you might get set up and partnered with, and then run into trouble if people are just aggregating data that's going to be gone in 16 months anyway. The same thing applies with purchase intent data. The data privacy laws they're legit. They're no joke. There's severe punishments for using data that's not sourced in the right way. So you need to make sure that you're using first-party data. You're partnering with people that have a source for that's confirmed, that they can identify the activity that it's coming from. Even in the short term, you don't want to be using data that's kind of Frankenstein together from all these different places. It's just inaccurate. The lookalike audiences, again, that's just guesswork. So in 16 months, you're going to have to use first-party data. So you might as well start now and get the good stuff, and just set yourself up for success. And then, obviously the kind of nuts and bolts of the day-to-day stuff all applies too. What kind of ads can I run? What kind of targeting do I have? What kind of optimizations are going to happen while the campaign's running? And then it goes back to what I had mentioned before, like they need to be able to explain not only their product offerings, but why those match your KPIs. Because if that disconnect exists from the start, it's just not a good match. And that's just going to lead to problems down the road. And then of course, you want it to work. So that last question is always, hey, let me see some reporting, example reports. What are your benchmarks? If they can't answer those questions, that's a real problem. So you want to make sure that your campaign's set up for success.
All right, I think we're going to have to leave it there. A lot of great information. Adam, thank you so much for the time today. Truly appreciate it. I want to thank our audience as well. And if anyone wants to continue to explore these issues, there's a link there on your screen to techtarget.com. We invite you to do so. Thanks so much and have a good day.